It all began with a desperate phone call from an aging caretaker named Mrs. Hargrove. Her voice trembled as she described the eerie occurrences plaguing the Black Mirror Mansion. "It's the reflections," she whispered. "They're alive. They mimic our every move, then step out of the mirrors to haunt us." Intrigued yet cautious, the gang drove their van through winding roads surrounded by thick woods, the mansion's gothic silhouette looming against a moonlit sky. As they approached, a chilling wind swept through, carrying the faint sound of whispers. The scene was set for a mystery, unlike any other. Inside the mansion, Mrs. Hargrove, a petite woman with sharp eyes, greeted them with urgency. The gang gathered in the grand hall, where gilded mirrors adorned every wall. "The trouble started a month ago," Mrs. Hargrove explained, her gaze darting to a massive mirror at the room's center. "At first it was a subtle flicker, a shadow, but then..." Her voice broke as she recounted the disappearance of her assistant Lydia. Velma, adjusting her glasses, inspected the mirrors while Fred examined the locks on the mansion's doors and windows. "No forced entry," he noted. Daphne, her curiosity piqued, studied a nearby mirror, her reflection appearing slightly off. As they split up to investigate, Velma's scientific curiosity led her to the mansion's library, where she uncovered old blueprints and records. These mirrors were imported from a reclusive artisan who claimed they could capture souls, she read aloud, her brow furrowing. Meanwhile, Fred and Daphne explored the dining room, finding broken shards of glass that seemed to shimmer unnaturally. Scooby and Shaggy, predictably, found themselves in the kitchen, lured by the promise of leftover snacks. However, their lighthearted snack hunt turned eerie when a reflection in the window moved out of sync, waving mockingly before vanishing into the darkness. The tension escalated when Daphne let out a startled scream. The gang rushed to find her standing before the central mirror, her reflection, or what should have been her reflection, gone. It's empty," she stammered, her voice trembling. Suddenly, the mirror's surface rippled like water, and a shadowy figure emerged. Its form was humanoid but distorted, its features warped, and its movements unnatural. The gang froze as it stepped toward Daphne, reaching out a hand that mirrored her every movement. Fred acted swiftly, pulling Daphne away while Velma shouted, "It's an illusion. There must be a projector hidden somewhere." Determined to uncover the truth, the gang regrouped in the study to form a plan. Velma shared her findings about the artisan and suggested the mirrors were part of an elaborate hoax. "If we find the source of the projections, we can stop this," she concluded. Fred proposed setting traps to corner whoever was behind the illusion, while Daphne's unease deepened. Scooby and Shaggy reluctantly agreed to help, though their nerves were frayed. As the clock struck midnight, the gang prepared to face the unknown, the mansion's dark corridors echoing with the sound of their resolviant, the faint, mocking laughter of reflections. Midnight's toll echoed through the Black Mirror Mansion as the gang split up to execute their plan. Velma took charge of locating the projector's source, armed with blueprints and a flashlight. Fred and Daphne began setting traps in key areas, focusing on rooms with the most reflective surfaces. Meanwhile, Scooby and Shaggy, armed with a reluctant sense of duty, carried mirrors from the smaller rooms into the central hall to minimize potential threats. The mansion's eerie silence was broken only by the occasional creak of floorboards or the distant, unsettling laughter of reflections. Velma's investigation led her to the basement, a dusty, labyrinthine space filled with old trunks and forgotten furniture. As she followed the blueprints, she discovered a hidden compartment in the wall containing a sophisticated array of projection equipment. "This must be it," she murmured, examining the intricate setup. The machinery projected eerie, distorted images onto reflective surfaces, explaining the strange movements in the mirrors. But Velma's satisfaction was short-lived when she heard footsteps behind her. Whirling around, she saw a figure, her own reflection, stepping out of a nearby mirror, its eyes glowing ominously. Upstairs, Fred and Daphne worked tirelessly to set their traps. Fred placed pressure-activated snares near the central mirror, while Daphne arranged tripwires across the hallways. "Whoever is behind this won't get far once we catch them," Fred said confidently. Daphne, however, remained uneasy. "Fred, what if this isn't just a hoax? There's something about these mirrors, something wrong," she whispered. Before Fred could respond, a chilling scream echoed through the mansion. Recognizing Velma's voice, they abandoned their work and sprinted toward the basement. Scooby and Shaggy, meanwhile, had taken refuge in the library. After moving several mirrors, they huddled together, trying to ignore the unsettling sounds around them. "Raggy, I don't like this place," Scooby whimpered. Shaggy nodded fervently. "Me neither, pal. Let's just stay here and—" His sentence was cut off as a mirror across the room began to ripple. The duo watched in terror as their reflections emerged, distorted and malicious. "Let's get out of here," Shaggy screamed, dragging Scooby toward the door. As they fled, the reflections gave chase, their mocking laughter growing louder. In the basement, Fred and Daphne found Velma cornered by her mirror doppelganger. Acting quickly, Fred used a flashlight to disrupt the reflection, causing it to waver and retreat. "It's the light," Velma exclaimed. "Direct light weakens the projections." Armed with this new knowledge, the trio regrouped and headed upstairs to find Scooby and Shaggy. They encountered the frightened duo in the central hall, where the reflections had cornered them. Using their flashlights, the gang drove the illusions back into the mirrors. "We need to shut down the projector for good," Fred said. Velma nodded, determination lighting her face. "Let's end this." The gang regrouped in the central hall, their flashlights now indispensable tools against the malevolent reflections. Velma clutched a map of the mansion, her finger tracing the path to the basement where the projection equipment awaited. "The source of all this chaos is down there," she declared. "If we destroy the projector, we'll stop these illusions." Fred nodded, formulating a plan to protect the group as they moved. "Daphne, you and I will take the lead. Velma, you stay in the middle with Scooby and Shaggy. Keep your flashlights ready." As they descended the grand staircase, the air grew colder, and the mansion seemed to close in around them. The reflective surfaces along the walls began to ripple, and faint whispers echoed through the corridors. Shaggy, his voice trembling, muttered, "Why do we always end up in creepy basements?" Scooby nodded, his tail tucked between his legs. Suddenly, a mirror near the landing shattered, sending shards flying. From the broken glass emerged a twisted figure, its reflection-like body writhing unnaturally. Fred shouted, "Lights, now!" The gang quickly aimed their beams, forcing the figure to retreat into the shadows. Reaching the basement, they found the projector room in disarray. The equipment hummed ominously, casting distorted images onto the walls and ceiling. Velma approached the main console, carefully examining its controls. "This isn't just a standard projector," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's been modified with advanced optics and something ancient." Daphne, her flashlight sweeping the room, spotted a symbol etched into the floor beneath the projector. "It matches the design on the mansion's mirrors," she pointed out. Velma's brow furrowed. Whoever set this up knew exactly what they were doing. As Velma worked to disable the machine, the reflections began to materialize in the room, their mocking laughter growing louder. One by one, distorted doppelgangers of the gang emerged, their grotesque features exaggerating the group's every move. "This is too weird," Shaggy yelled, dodging a swipe from his reflection. Fred and Daphne used their flashlights to push the figures back, but they kept returning, more persistent with each attack. Velma, her fingers flying across the controls, shouted, "I need more time! Keep them away from the console!" Finally, Velma found the projector's power source, an intricate crystal emitting a pulsing light. "This is it," she exclaimed. "If we remove the crystal, the system will shut down." Fred nodded, moving to help her as Daphne and Scooby held the reflections at bay. With a firm tug, Velma removed the crystal, and the projector's hum ceased. The reflections let out an unearthly wail before dissolving into wisps of light. The room fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting instantly. "We did it!" Fred said, his voice filled with relief. But Velma's gaze lingered on the crystal in her hands, its faint glow hinting at secrets yet to be uncovered. With the crystal safely in Velma's hands, the gang retreated to the mansion's study to regroup. The oppressive aura had lifted, but the silence felt almost too complete. Velma placed the crystal on the desk, its faint glow casting soft shadows on the old wood. "This thing is more than just a power source," she murmured. "It's ancient, and it's tied to the mirrors. Whoever designed this system wasn't just creating illusions, they were tapping into something far older." Fred leaned in, studying the intricate carvings on the crystal. Could it have something to do with the artisan who made the mirrors? He asked. Velma nodded, deep in thought. Daphne flipped through a leather-bound journal she'd found earlier, its pages filled with sketches of the mansion and cryptic notes. This belonged to the original owner, she said, her voice tinged with unease. He believed the mirrors could act as gateways to another realm, but only if powered by a unique crystal. The gang exchanged wary glances. So the reflections weren't just illusions? Shaggy asked, his voice trembling. They were real? Velma adjusted her glasses, her tone serious. Real or not, someone used this knowledge to create a dangerous system, and we still don't know who or why. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. Fred motioned for everyone to stay quiet as he crept toward the door. Peeking out, he saw a figure disappearing into the darkness, carrying what appeared to be a mirror shard. "Someone's still here," he whispered. The gang quickly followed, their flashlights cutting through the shadows. They tracked the figure to the attic, a dusty, maze-like space filled with forgotten relics. "Be careful," Fred cautioned. "Whoever this is, they've gone to great lengths to keep this secret." In the attic center, they found a small table surrounded by broken mirrors. A cloaked figure stood behind it, their face obscured. "You shouldn't have meddled," the figure said, their voice low and distorted. Fred stepped forward, his stance firm. "Who are you, and why are you doing this?" The figure laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the confined space. "This mansion's power belongs to me. The mirrors, the crystal, they're tools to control what lies beyond. And now that you've disrupted my plans, you'll join the others in the reflections." The figure lunged toward the crystal on the table, but Velma acted quickly, shining her flashlight directly at them. The cloaked figure recoiled, their form flickering like an unstable image. "They're another projection," Velma exclaimed. Daphne moved swiftly, knocking over the table and scattering the broken mirrors. As the shards hit the ground, the figure let out a distorted scream before vanishing entirely. "They must have been controlling everything from here," Fred said, examining the remnants of the setup. Velma picked up a journal left behind, its pages filled with strange symbols. "This isn't over," she said. "Whoever they are, they'll be back for the crystal." The gang reconvened in the study, their nerves frayed but their resolve stronger than ever. Velma flipped through the journal left behind by the cloaked figure, her brow furrowing as she deciphered its cryptic symbols. "This isn't just a record of the mansion's history," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "It's a manual for controlling the reflections. These symbols describe how to summon them, how to trap them, and," she hesitated, her voice dropping, "how to unleash them completely." Fred's jaw tightened as he leaned over the journal. "We need to destroy this before it falls into the wrong hands." Daphne's gaze shifted to the crystal on the desk, its faint glow pulsing rhythmically. "What if destroying the journal isn't enough?" she asked. "The crystal is still here, and we don't know its full power." Velma nodded, her fingers tracing the crystal's intricate carvings. "You're right. If the crystal truly is a key to another realm, destroying it might sever the connection for good. But doing so could also release whatever energy it's holding back." Shaggy, who had been nervously pacing, stopped mid-step. "Release? Like what kind of release?" he stammered. Scooby whimpered, hiding behind his friend. Fred stood and addressed the group. "We'll secure the crystal first, then decide on the safest course of action. Velma, keep studying the journal. Daphne and I will search the mansion for any remaining clues or equipment. Shaggy and Scooby, stay here and keep an eye on the crystal." Shaggy groaned. "Why do we always get the creepy jobs?" But a stern look from Fred silenced further complaints. As the group split up, the study grew eerily quiet, the air heavy with anticipation. Shaggy and Scooby exchanged uneasy glances, their flashlights clutched tightly. Meanwhile, Fred and Daphne's search led them to the grand hall, where they discovered a hidden panel behind one of the mirrors. Inside was a small alcove containing what appeared to be a transmitter. "This must have been part of the cloaked figure's setup," Daphne said, examining the device. "It's designed to amplify the crystal's energy and project it through the mirrors." Fred frowned, dismantling the transmitter piece by piece. "We'll disable this, but we still need to ensure the crystal itself is neutralized." Back in the study, Shaggy and Scooby's anxiety grew as the crystal's glow intensified. "Raggy, it's looking weird," Scooby whimpered. Shaggy nodded, backing away. Yeah, like, really weird. Suddenly, the crystal emitted a sharp pulse of light, and the mirrors in the study began to ripple. Shaggy and Scooby froze as a reflection emerged from one of the larger mirrors. Unlike the twisted figures from before, this one was calm, almost regal, its translucent form shimmering with an otherworldly glow. "You must destroy the crystal," it said, its voice echoing unnaturally. "If it remains, your world will fall." The gang stared in stunned silence as the reflection's otherworldly form hovered before them. Its shimmering outline pulsed with energy, and its voice echoed, "The crystal is a gateway. Destroy it, and the link between worlds will be severed." Velma stepped forward cautiously, her scientific curiosity battling with a growing unease. "If we destroy it, will there be consequences for your realm?" she asked. The reflection's gaze seemed to intensify. "Our realm will remain intact. Your world, however, will collapse under its influence if you fail to act." Fred and Daphne burst into the study, startled by the spectral figure. "What's going on?" Fred demanded, his eyes darting between the reflection and the glowing crystal. Velma quickly filled them in. "This being claims the crystal is a gateway, and that destroying it will protect our world." Daphne's expression was a mix of fear and determination. "If there's even a chance it's right, we have to try," she said. Fred nodded, his jaw set. "Then we need a plan. The crystal's energy is volatile. We can't just smash it." Velma turned to the journal, flipping through its pages until she found a passage describing how to neutralize the crystal's energy. "We'll need to create a containment field," she explained. "If we channel the energy into the mirrors, they should absorb the excess and collapse the connection safely." Fred sprang into action, assigning roles. "Daphne, help Velma set up the containment field. Shaggy, Scooby, and I will move the mirrors into position." Shaggy groaned but complied, his fear outweighed by the urgency of the situation. Scooby followed closely, his tail wagging nervously. As the gang worked, the crystal's glow grew brighter, its pulses sending faint tremors through the mansion. The reflection watched silently, its form flickering as if tethered to the crystal's energy. "Hurry," it urged, its voice strained. Velma and Daphne positioned the mirrors in a circle around the crystal, using the journal's instructions to align them perfectly. Fred secured the final mirror just as the tremors intensified, cracks spreading along the study's walls. "It's ready," Velma shouted. "Fred, activate the containment switch." Fred flipped the switch and a brilliant light erupted from the crystal, refracting through the mirrors in a dazzling display. The reflection let out a final, echoing cry before dissolving into the light. The mansion shook violently as the mirrors absorbed the crystal's energy, their surfaces shattering one by one. When the last mirror broke, the crystal's glow faded completely, leaving the room in silence. The gang stood amidst the wreckage, their breaths heavy. "Is it over?" Shaggy asked, his voice trembling. Velma picked up the now dull crystal, her expression thoughtful. "For now," she said, "but mysteries like this have a way of returning."